What is good, everyone? Welcome to the Outside the Box podcast. My name is Nick Ingval, and on this show, I try to present to you new ways to think about the sneaker world through conversations with designers, creators, industry insiders, and just people that I find fascinating within the footwear business. My goal is to dissect their approach to learn the tips and tricks and best practices and ultimately find things that you and I can take away from the conversation to help carve our own lane in the sneaker game. On today's episode, I talk with Harry and Cole, two of the three people behind Soul Retriever, a community and soon-to-be app that shares sneaker raffles from around the world with their audience to give them all a better chance at copying the kicks they want. If you're a member of the Sneaker History Discord, you already know how valuable their service can be. What's even more impressive about these guys is how they want to use Soul Retriever to make the world a better place. I'm just going to stop there. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Welcome back to the podcast. I got a couple of guys that are doing some really cool stuff with me today, and I'm excited to talk to Harry and Cole. Guys, how you doing?
Hey, what's up? I'm doing all right. We're doing okay.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So this podcast is like something that I want to use to kind of showcase people that I think are just doing cool stuff in the sneaker world. That, you know, it's we live in a time where people look at, you know, accounts that have massive followers and think that that's like the only thing that matters. But then there's people like yourselves who are like got these hustles going on that are making amazing things happen. And there's just nobody talking about how much work goes on behind the scenes for those things to happen. So hopefully we can dig a little into that. But I guess like the best thing would be if maybe you guys could give like the brief intro of who you are and maybe how you got into sneakers.
So like I was like a big runner in high school. So I was like really into like Nike and track spikes and like Shoe Dog and that sort of stuff. So I like started collecting track spikes to start off, and then got a little bit stumbled kind of into the sneaker world via fashion, and was like getting into some like things that are a little bit harder to get. So I was like collecting some spikes that, you know, sold out, dead stock kind of stuff. Like some of those would go for like $500 now. And then once I wasn't running quite as much, like in college and stuff like that, I was like, oh, sneakers, like I wear these a lot more. So I'm gonna start keeping my eye out for a few pairs of these. And I think the first one I was like really excited about, I got a pair of like the Air Max Skeptas, the ones that were like that green orange metallic color.
I remember those. Yeah.
They're like kind of ugly, but also pretty sick. And then I had a pair of Vapor Maxes that I got with those, like the first time those released. And like those are the ones I was like most excited about.
Also, super. No, go.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, and after that, now I have like way too many pairs of shoes.
Cole's got
just want to say that's kind of my favorite combination of like kind of ugly but super sick. Like that's right in my wheelhouse. Like if people are like, I don't know if those are good, but it's dope to see you wearing them. That's like the shoes that I like.
That's like the perfect shoe right there. I feel like all the Skeptas are like that too. I'm just like, shoes kind of nasty.
Yeah.
I got into shoes, sneakers, I guess, like end of middle school. A bunch of friends were into it, just like the whole business of, you know, some people would get stuff and resell it. I play basketball, so I'd get a bunch of basketball shoes. I was fascinated by the way that people would, you know, secure different shoes online, and like just the industry as a whole is just incredible, and it's continuing to grow, and people just, you know, some people don't understand the fact that this is a massive industry and there's tons of different, you know, individual facets of different companies that exist within it. And yeah, I became like fascinated with the industry, and also just big fan of sneakers, wearing different stuff, different styles. So yeah, Cole and I are both, you know, Soul Retrievers, you know, for sneakerheads, by sneakerheads, not just you know, people that can, you know, make a cool website that helps you, you know, understand sneaker raffles and stuff. We, you know, we're both definite sneakerheads for sure. So
yeah, it is kind of crazy too. I mean, just recently came out that that JD Sports, which is basically the UK version of Foot Locker, right? Like Foot Locker Inc. is massive. Hopefully people that are watching this know enough, but like Foot Locker owns, you know, East Bay, Foot Action, Champs. I mean, part of GOAT, they have their, you know, money and hands in a lot of different things. And to me, that's super smart because like you said, there's a lot of facets to the sneaker world that I don't think are obvious from the newcomers to the game in a sense. But I think, you know, they just announced that they were going to acquire Shoe Palace, which is, a kind of long-standing like West Coast brand. We've had a lot of Shoe
Mm-hmm.
Palace out here in California for years.
Yeah, it was like a family-owned business, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's owned by the Mershow brothers, and they really kind of carved out a really interesting piece of the retail market because they they just did stores better than everybody else, right? Like they did physical retail stores super clean. Like think of the way that we look at like a Hype Beast website and think, well, yeah, this looks way better than every other website that's out there. It's because it's all white, minimal branding, minimal everything, and kind of the gist of like most of the, the marketing campaigns that catch our eye on social media, right? It's like, you think of like the fear of gods and the off whites and stuff, and most of it's less is more approach to marketing. But I think that's really interesting. Yeah, like that's really interesting. It's cool to talk to you guys about this because I think it's really fascinating to see, that's one of those deals that gets so much exposure that it's like, wow, there's a lot going on in this whole sneaker world that, maybe people don't understand. So I guess like that said, how does like, I guess a quick for people that don't know, let's do like a quick rundown on what Soul Retriever is, what you guys do, and then maybe get into the story of how you guys even decided to move forward with it.
Sure. You want to go for it? Cole? You want to go for it?
I'll let you take this one, Harry.
So Soul Retriever is every sneakerhead's one-stop shop for everything sneaker raffle, sneaker release, different news, all sorts of content. Everything that you need to know or want to know about every upcoming sneaker release, we're providing for you. So whether that's, different raffles to enter to secure the sneaker, different online releases that are going to happen to, hopefully get on release day, different news happening in the community. We're very engaged on Twitter. So, we're kind of that one-stop shop for all things sneaker related. As far as how we came to be, Cole and I are 2 of 3 owners of the company, and we're not the original founders. So Soul Retriever existed for maybe like 10 or 11 months before we had the opportunity to acquire it. The original owners were not interested in continuing it. They had other professional careers they wanted to move forward with, and we had the unique opportunity to purchase the company and grow it and put it in, pivot into the direction that it is today. So we've only been we relaunched in December of last year, so we're just about a year since the official relaunch. But yeah, that's kind of how it came to be for us. We weren't the originator, the original founders, but we're all aligned in the mission for the company, right? And like I said, buy sneakerheads for sneakerheads. So that's what we're doing.
And one of the cool pieces is like the the original owners every so often like they'll drop us a line and they're excited to see like what we're doing. There's some guys based in the UK. So it was interesting. Like the audience has had a massive shift. I'm not super aware like what it was before, but I can only imagine is more UK based before, and it is very much more US based now. Granted, like we're all US based, so that makes sense. And like we definitely try to like cover raffles worldwide. We have like tons of raffles from Japan that we have like added, especially the skate shops with all the SB dunks dropping. And like we do have international coverage, but like our audience has been overwhelmingly based in the US now, ever since that acquisition.
Yeah, that's a good point because one thing that I was I plugged in Soul Retriever to the Sneaker History Discord, right? And it's a relatively small community. It's mostly the Patreon supporters from the Sneaker History podcast, and but I'm always looking for like unique ways to kind of add a little value to that, right? Like people are already subscribing to a certain extent and putting money there, and it's like, okay, like how can I add a little more value, but not like I don't want it to become just another cook group because I'm not gonna. I feel like that's a slippery slope that, for me, I totally respect it, right? It's an amazing hustle. If I was 16, 17 years old, that's probably exactly what I'd be doing right now. But at this, like make me sound old, but like at this age, like I'm looking to kind of dive deeper into the businesses and the inner workings of things and really kind of like, I don't know, like kind of help people see things that they don't see, because inevitably every job I've had, every role I've been in terms of working with people, you're just in it and you don't get to see it. And one of the things I was actually really excited about and surprised to see when we first hooked it up was, seeing all the raffles from around the world, right? Because I think that's something that has been really challenging for me. Like my career path working for companies like Complex and Soul Collector and, all these different brands, it's always very segmented. It's always very like, well, we don't, I worked at Finish Line. We didn't even sell internationally. So like there was no like, but at the same time, my network was international. Like I had worked with Foot Locker on Sneakerpedia prior to that. And that was started by the Foot Locker team in the UK, not in New York, but they had to figure that out. So I was really excited to see that. And I was actually curious, wanted to know how that kind of came about too, because one of the things that I think is really kind of fascinating about sneakers is not only just like the fact that it's massively global now, but like, Cole, you coming into it with like track spikes, right? That's a completely underserved niche market that like, you probably have insights into that world that most people that are sneakerheads don't pay attention to. But it's like you said, you can sell those shoes for $500 a couple, minutes, days, whatever after release date. And nobody's thinking about that. Right. And I think that's really fascinating. And also, the raffle thing for me. So like, just to, I guess, clarify, the way it works is, in what we signed up for on Sneaker History Discord is like, we essentially automate like your guys' system to flow in to say, hey, these are all the raffles that we're watching around the world when new product drops. Mm-hmm. So what I really love about that too, and one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you guys is because you're really in a roundabout way, like serving small businesses needs for marketing without being like the typical agency, right? And I think that's exciting. And I think that you guys probably have a lot more opportunity to network with people. And, like you said, looking at this, hundreds of billions of dollars that are floating around in this business, like that's inevitably like the best way to figure out where to find your piece of it. So how in the last like 12 months of having Soul Retriever kind of be your own thing, I guess first, before we do that, like, let's talk about like that transition. What did it look like prior to you guys relaunching it? And then what in the last 12 months have you guys like share with me maybe some wow moments of like, shit, I didn't think this was going to happen, or I didn't expect this. And what you do, maybe the examples of what you would do to deal with those situations and how you move forward with them.
I want to point out a quick thing. I'm sure all of your followers or, listeners are very big sneakerheads, but I have some friends that just got into sneakers, and I was explaining to them what Soul Retriever was and what raffles are. And just for the average person who may not know, sneaker raffles are not like pretty much any other raffle that exists, in that a raffle is you win something for free. People are fascinated by the fact that sneaker raffles are winning the chance to purchase something, which is just incredible to think about, right? Because you're not actually winning it; you're winning the chance to then go pay someone for it, which is crazy. But
yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I was chatting with my girlfriend the other day, and like, this is such a cliche, but I was like, oh man, like I was so pumped. I was like, yo, I won this raffle for these. I won the Michigan Dunk Highs. And I was like, yeah, I got to drive out to Framingham. I'm based in Boston. Framingham's like pretty far away. But she was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, you're so lucky. And I was like, yeah, there's still like $120. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, you got to still buy these. And she's like, that's like not exciting. Why are you excited? And I was like, it's still like winning a lottery.
Yep.
We've had a bunch of wow moments. I would say one of the cool ones recently, Cole, if you can remember the name of the guy, I forget, the designer who did the dunks for COVID, the green, what was his name? We did him on the site. And there was a designer that did a special collab pair of dunks. I think he did like 1 or 2 versions. And it was a charity auction. And so this was a unique type of raffle. It wasn't the normal retailer putting out a retail pair of shoes. He did a custom pair, and very desired shoe, and it was raising money for coronavirus relief and everything going on now. And he, we directed a ton of traffic to him, and he reached out directly and was like, yo, you guys, you changed the whole game with this. This is incredible. People are donating all this, like, just like an example of like positive change that wasn't just like a typical, raffle being provided, so it was that was definitely a unique thing. But we relaunched, like you asked what kind of it was prior. There was one of the things that, Cole, myself, and the other owner really saw was like this cult following of people that were really tied to the brand. And although it was not a ton of people, it was relatively small when we acquired it. We noticed that, so we've continued to grow on that. In that, all of our followers are very dedicated to what we do, and they support us. So originally, the amount of content wasn't as much as it is now on social. That's probably the biggest difference. We're very engaged on social. So in the past year, we went from, I think, like 7 or 8 thousand followers to now we're at like just under like 55,000 on Twitter. Super engaged on Twitter, which is great for us. It's been great for every facet of the business. So yeah, I mean, what are other wow moments? The PS5, the whole craze over PS5 is a wow moment in itself. We started,
Yeah, that's been like an absolute like rocket ship.
we
Like
started,
I'm like everyone on Twitter has been really like chirping after a lot of the PS5s, like restocks and stuff like that. And like people have been super engaged on that sort of thing. To the point where like that, some people were like, where's the news about the sneakers? And we're like there, and then like we tweet a few things about sneakers and like back to PS5 content, please. And we're like, there are no restocks yet. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it. But we had that collab with Air 32. He contacted us. And it's cool seeing that sort of work with like artists doing like some of like those smaller custom products. Like I don't mean like the Warren Lotuses of the world who are doing like tons and tons of volume.
Yeah.
But there's some guys that are doing some like really cool custom work. I know, Shoe Surgeon's like gotten pretty big now, but there are guys like one of my favorite artists, like Donnie the Dybbuk, on Instagram. He does these like sweet um like rubber dip on like not hype shoes. Like honestly, he just like picks up a pair of Blazers or like a pair of Vans. And like those are super cool now. Like, and he puts his own spin on them. And it's like I'd rather have a pair of those because I know that's like one of 100. And like he
Mhm.
poured his heart and soul into those. And like that's like iconically his style now. It's like we've seen some like rappers wearing like the ice cream Air Force Ones, um, and they're like these like pink, yellow, and blue dipped Air Force Ones, and like they're so cool. And like it's not like an Off White, it's not like a Supreme collab. It's just like a guy that's doing art out of his garage and making these
Yeah.
things that are like very cool. So that is like I would love to be able to like shout out Donnie. I would love to be able to work with him in the future. But it was cool that
Yeah.
like we got guys like Air 32 did that fundraiser. We did a fundraiser for Black Lives Matter where we auctioned off a few pairs of shoes for like Chunky Dunkies, and like made some donations to like local communities, which was really really sick. And like to be able to do that just like via a platform, like I could do some
Mhm.
stuff on my own, right? But like to have a platform of an engaged audience and then say like, all right, cool, we're going to do something that's like in our industry, which is like everyone wants these Chunky Dunkies right now. We're going to buy a pair of these. We have the money. We bought them for, we paid StockX price for them, which is a lot.
1,700.
Yeah, we paid like, I mean, yeah, it's like, that sounds like a good deal now because they've appreciated
Yeah.
a little bit. Um, but we made, I made air quotes here, but like we raised a lot of money like that way and raised a lot of awareness. And we had
It was over
people,
10 grand, I think.
yeah, it was like, yeah, it was a good amount of money. So that was really exciting. And like to have a platform that you can like engage to do stuff that matters. Like, there's like the drops and stuff like that. And we want to engage people in there, but like then to also be able to get behind like other things that matter when they matter, to say like, hey, all right, everybody rally behind this. Like we can do something here, and to be able to like get people to do that is really cool. So like also shout out to our audience and like all our followers on Twitter, like who do believe in that sort of stuff and like will let us do that.
There's something to be said about, like, I don't want to dive too deep in, but like some brands, some companies, some sites, whatever, will remain totally like unbiased, or not involve themselves in social political things going on. We if we have a stance on something that we believe is right and just and needs to be talked about, whether it's really for COVID or Black Lives Matter stuff, like we're not going to be silent on that. If it's we take advantage of the fact that we have an engaged audience that also cares about it. So there's more power to that. So
Well, that's super dope because we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but that was actually the first time that I like really noticed Soul Retriever.
oh wow,
On Twitter was the Black Lives Matter like fundraiser stuff you guys are doing. And one of the things that I have kind of always been about in my journey in this whole sneaker thing is exactly that, right? Like I 100% am the person that, you know, if my favorite rapper believes in something, they need to speak that, right? Like that is like your obligation in life, in my opinion. And that gets a little too like, you know, sounds a little hardcore, but I just feel like, yo, you didn't earn these, you know, this audience, you didn't earn these people's respect without being truthful, right? Like it's very rare that somebody earns an audience and like builds relationships and the audience doesn't want to hear what they have to say, especially on important matters. And I think that's a really awesome thing that you guys did. And you know, obviously I missed the Air 32 thing, but I did see the pictures recently. I don't know where I was. Maybe it was just on the Twitter or Instagram when I was scrolling through doing the research to follow up with you guys. But I think it's cool because the other perception from, you know, like me being a little bit older in the sneaker thing, the perception is that, you know, that isn't a priority for the younger generation, right? And my experience is exactly the opposite. Like the younger people like yourselves that are doing this stuff are actually, you know, not to use the stereotype, but more woke than the old folks like me that are like, you know, 40 somethings and just basically complaining about people on their lawn. You know, it's like, come on, like, you know, like people got to live and, you know, I understand to some extent, right? Like, you know, a lot of people are going to complain about StockX prices and bots and all these things, but like, yo, that's just the world that we live in now.
Yeah.
And you could either choose to be a negative, you know, influence on that and complain about it, or you could take it and flip it kind of the way you guys did and like, yo, we have this massive audience. Let's do something good about it. Cause at the end of the day, like, you know, like, I mean, not to discredit it, but it's like sneakers don't really matter, right? We gotta give a shit about each other before we can get to the point where sneakers are important.
Exactly.
And I think that's like a kind of a really cool way for people to, you know, hopefully listening to this that haven't been introduced to you guys to understand like where you're coming from, because I think those kind of personal values, brand values, however you want to frame them, are more important now more than ever, right? Like it's a part of our daily conversation, you know. My personal opinion is that's a good thing, but I also totally understand that like sometimes we got to back away and just like disconnect from that stuff. So it was really cool that you guys kind of like led into talking about that, because I do think it's really important, and hopefully like that next generation can kind of see that too, of like, hey, this is something that we can do where you don't necessarily have to just be quiet on things because you're a company, right? Companies can stand for things that you personally stand for as well. And I think the world will be a better place for that. So hopefully that continues on. But I
Definitely.
guess, so thinking in that sense, like, is that something that you guys see as kind of a regular thing that you can do on a, you know, like, I don't know what, monthly, yearly, quarterly type basis where you're working with creators and, you know, whether it's customs or whether it's, you know, fundraising type things? Is that something that you guys see as like just going to, you know, be a part of what you do moving forward now that you've seen kind of how it works?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely, you know, good for the creator, good for the cause, whatever it might be. But in general, I think like what you said about companies like choosing to be silent, I think a lot of stuff, I think it says a lot if you choose to be silent on certain things. So I think that, yeah, whether it's, you know, partnering with a creator, raising money for a certain cause, raising awareness, I think all that stuff, you know, furthers into the whole, you know, like sense of community and, you know, and caring about around the whole community that we built. So yeah, I think we're definitely going to continue with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I feel like especially as a brand like in sneaker culture, and like you know we're a bunch of like white dudes that like got this thing from like, I mean, granted we bought it from some other white dudes in the UK, but like still like we're in this industry and like really owe it all to like black culture. Like, you know, Jordan Brand was built on the sweat of like black
Yep.
athletes, right? And it's like it would be disgusting if we didn't like put something behind that, and like continue to try to do that. And I think that's like something that I try to stay aware of, like as we're working on this brand, I'm like working on the company, like we don't want to be like exploiting the industry. um
Absolutely.
and like,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of our stuff is offered free of charge, like all the raffles and stuff like that. And like that's like the one way where you can have $0. Like you don't need to spend thousands of dollars on a bot. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on proxies. You don't have to pay resell. Like, yeah, you may not win, but like at least you can get a shot at like winning that pair of Jordans for like retail. And like that's, you know, there's still a lot to be said about like going and waiting in line at the store. Just with COVID and all that, it's not possible right now. So like Raffles is honestly like your best shot at getting something for retail.
We
Um,
we saw an absolutely massive boom. I would say specifically, at the beginning of COVID, and then definitely like when the Chunkies released, Chunky Dunkies back in like I think it was April, May around there.
I think our
Um,
site crashed half a dozen times with the Chunky
yeah,
Dunkies. Like we were just insane amount of traffic.
right.
Like that was like we've had higher traffic months since then and like are consistently trending on higher traffic. But like as soon as the dunks kicked off, that was probably the highest stress our
Absolutely.
site's ever seen and the higher stress like we have personally ever seen because
Yep.
every sneaker shop and basement skate shop, like if they have one employee, they have a size run from like 8 to 10 of the Chunky Dunkies and like are raffling away one pair and mysteriously four pairs are disappearing, which I totally
Yep.
respect. Like they got to make money. Um, but like we probably had, oh man, like I stores came out of the woodworks I had never heard of. Which is also kind of cool because like then you're like, oh, I got to look up the store, see what they're about and stuff like that. So it's cool that Nike's doing that with distribution for SBs, but like also, our other founder is honestly like he's our boots on the ground guy who enters most of the raffles, and he was like, I need help, and like we were we had to step up and like start getting these raffles in because like I don't do that on a daily basis. I have another job. He does too,
Yeah.
but like is pretty much able to like keep up with it. And I honestly I don't think he slept during the chunky donkey situation.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
we have a whole bunch of, different like methods of like data aggregation for raffles, whether it's just different sources that that alert us of a raffle being live, and then it's up to us to then go put it on the site. So yeah, we were the other founder definitely during that time was and it still remains to be killing it. But yeah, we saw some, that was definitely a wow moment at the Chunky Donkeys because from then on, like we had steady growth to that point, and then it was like this like the spike you hear about, like all of a sudden it was just straight up. That was what it was. And grateful, thankful for that. But that was definitely like a wow moment. Good problems to have.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about that in terms of the process, right? Like other than, a Chunky Donkey release where the whole world all of a sudden wants, dunks with their ice cream, but like, what is, do you have a way for, for instance, for like, let's say I open my own boutique and I'm like, hey, I want you guys to cover my raffles. Do you have a way for people to, other than maybe like Twitter or social, like, and, talking about like the aggregation process, what other ways are you guys constantly kind of looking outside of the I mean, I know you guys have a lot on that you're already looking at, but that is always changing, right? That's kind of one of the things I really love about the sneaker game. Is just like some random dude who's wanted to open a skate shop all his life finally did it, and next thing you know, he's got SB inventory that he wants to sell. So what's that look like for you guys, and how do you go about finding new places, and how do you go about determining, when and how they get put onto the site?
So I'll cover this one. So like we honestly get a lot of suggestions from our audience. Like we have a super engaged audience. Like they want to see it on there. So like if they see something, people are in our DMs all the time saying, "Hey, this raffle just went live. You got to post it." And like they are, because we give up so much information, they're willing to share a lot of information with us as well. And it's like we do have some audience sourcing. Like we don't have any sort of formal system for it though, because like generally we want to fact check everything. We want to look it up, make sure we have, as much as like a very um, complete set of data around like the raffle. Like I know that sounds scientific, but it's really helpful when you're looking and like want to know exactly when it ends. And because some of these are flash raffles and like the parameters of like, does it ship? And like, is it local and that sort of stuff. So like we'll have folks that'll shoot it our way. We have other customers for the people that pay for the webhooks. So like our clients will also say, hey, can you add like these new sneaker stores, or like especially for our international customers, they'll make suggestions. They're like, hey, can you add like these 3 stores? They'll post raffles on Instagram. Here are their Instagram handles. So it's great. It's like our store gets bigger. Like our store list gets bigger. Like on a weekly basis, honestly.
Yeah, if those
Yeah.
if a store gets an allocation or starts to get allocations of big releases, we're going to find out about it because someone will say like, I got my pair from this store, you guys need to cover them next time, or the store will gain the hype around it if they're getting that kind of release. So whether it's that drop or the next drop, we'll know about it and we'll have it added to our list of monitored sites.
And like those
That's
stores
dope.
aren't trying to fly under the radar. If they get a shipment of dunks, they want everybody to know.
100%.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's something that I think is interesting about what you guys are doing because, like I said, to me, it's like, if you, not to use the cliche, but if you ever rode a skateboard in any way, shape, or form, you supported your local shop. Like that was just how it worked. You wanted to, mainly because you probably knew the dude that worked behind the counter that you want to go hang out with, right? And so you would just end up in the shop, and like that's just kind of the natural thing. And it expands into a lot of the sneaker world and like that kind of stuff and streetwear, but like really like skateboarding was like the like this is our thing, the local kids hanging out near the shop. And I think that's really fascinating about how you guys are kind of like shining a giant light on some of these stores that most people probably never ever saw or never knew about, right? Because inevitably, and this isn't not shots at anybody, but like as somebody who's worked on the the bigger media side of this, right? A complex or a soul collector, there's only so many eyes, and it's not a priority for big sites like that to pay attention to every single store. Like, people are passionate about the shoes, but like at the end of the day, they're looking at like massive partnerships with Nike directly or Nike SB directly in this example. And that's something I think has been really cool about the change in sneakers over the past, I would say, I don't know, 5 years or so, maybe 10 years at most, where you have a lot more eyes on smaller shops where, like you said, if people don't realize that, oh, you're blowing up my spot, but like that person behind the counter or that person that owns that store or manages that store is like, yo, we got to sell this to make rent next month,
Yeah.
right? Like, because oftentimes Nike SB specifically in dunks is the golden ticket to keep the store in
Mm-hmm.
business, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that
Yeah.
doesn't sell on a regular basis, especially with COVID. So some of
Yeah.
these releases are like literally keeping the lights on for some of these people. So I think that's really, really dope. It makes me also wonder, like, what do you guys, in the last few years, or just even recently, like, what are some of the things that you see in the sneaker world that are other than just trolls that's frustrating to you, right? Like, I mean, there's obviously the other side of the coin in terms of sneakers is like bots, and everybody likes to complain about that. But like, what are some of the things that I guess annoy you or you see as challenges, and how do you think they could potentially be fixed? Because I personally see your guys' platform as a solution to how do these small stores get exposure, right? Like, well, this is it. You guys provide not only your own social platform, but like the webhooks are now going to all these different places that draw people in to find, the mom and pop shop in the middle of nowhere that nobody realized even existed last week.
I mean, my biggest gripe, like with, like, I get that people do bots and like stuff like that, and like that's fine. Like my biggest gripe with that whole thing is like it turns into like a who has the most money game, and like a margins game. So it's like, you know, if you have a few grand from your mom that you can throw at like, a big bot, and have like a few credit cards on hand from friends and parents and relatives or whatever, like you can rack up all the shoes and like then sell them for $15 a profit on StockX. Like that does ruin the fun a little bit. Like I don't mind the bot situation when it becomes like a, you know, for the some people that like use their bots to buy for other people. That's kind of like, I don't like hate that quite as much, because then it's like, all right, some people actually want these, and like at least it's still going to them, and like that's kind of like edging out the other folks that are just like buying them up for to like hoard. It's like the Moneyball game is like a little bit of a annoying thing. But I think raffles are really leveling the playing field.
Definitely.
I think sneakers was like Nike sneakers. I know it's a very difficult to win on Nike sneakers now. And it's been very frustrating for a lot of folks who are used to botting that as well.
Famously
But
trending
like,
for
yeah, famously trending right now for
Yeah.
you didn't get them.
Yeah.
Like I think they really kicked it off there, like by leveling the playing field, making it easier for like just your average person to like get a pair of shoes, like get their hands on a pair. And I think when people feel like they have a chance, and like when people can see that sort of thing, like it doesn't matter if you get them or not, but like it's cool when you do, and that's really exciting. And it's like not a big loss like when you don't get them. And I think like that's the cool thing about raffles, like gives more people access to these sort
Definitely.
of things like at cost. Um, it's like kind of like democratizing that whole thing. Um, it's like you know that's also kind of annoying too with sneakers, where it's like I feel like I've spent like hundreds of dollars in Nike shoes and I have not one in so long. So if someone out there from Nike is listening, like please hook up my account.
Yeah,
I think the melt.
I feel like we all feel that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, please hook up everyone's account.
So something else that's interesting is like, for better or worse, a lot of the sneaker industry revolves around the idea that like a lot of people like the idea that I want something because you can't have it. Like I want this sneaker because I got it, and then you can't get it right now because it's sold out, and I was able to get it, which is cool. But like at the same time, people should want to wear, want to get shoes, whether it's, whether they're wearing it. I would say if people are going to wear it, also want it, want to wear it because you like how it looks. Don't only feed into the hype as much as it, drives the industry. Like also want to wear something because you enjoy how it feels in your feet or how it looks in the mirror, that kind of thing. Not just like the hype that it drives.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
my
that's a
that is
good
my
point.
favorite part of our community on Twitter is like I'm a big Nike Blazer fan. I actually don't even have a pair of Blazers anymore. I wore my pair out. I have a pair of Vans, and that's like kind of the same thing. Um, the Blazer gang out there is gonna like crucify me here. But like we did a giveaway for Blazers. But like I anytime there's Blazer content on our Twitter, it's mostly me, and I'm just like, wow, I love these Blazers.
Always not
Um, it is 100% the chance time it is me. And I'm a big Blazer fan. And it's like cool because like those are never hyped. They're like not that sick. But like it's like a really classic silhouette. I think that's like cool because you can always get your hand on a pair of Blazers, and it's like about how you dress them.
Yep.
And I think that's like the beauty of like a lot of those really iconic silhouettes is like you can get behind kind of anything. Like maybe the Blazers day will come someday. Like Jordans have had their time in the sun for a while. Now it's the time. It's the year of the dunk, maybe the
Yeah.
decade of the dunk, and maybe SBs will have their chance, or not SBs. Maybe the Blazers will have their chance someday. But that's been a very fun thing for me. So
Yeah,
I
I mean
love seeing
that's a
get behind like the general release shoes.
yep. So that brings me to like two questions I actually kind of wanted to ask you guys thinking about talking to you is one like how do you see that progressing, right? Like you obviously have a little bit more insight into like the hottest thing because you can just say, well, this is what got clicked the most, right? Like, you know,
Mhm.
and like is that the Blazer that's next? But like also, how do you? Is there a way that you could see Soul Retriever in the future, maybe even introducing people to shoes that aren't necessarily right now being raffled, right? Because like the raffled stuff is always the hype stuff, generally speaking, right?
Mhm.
But like there's plenty of other cool shit out there that just doesn't get the exposure. Is there any plan for you guys in the future to do something like that? Maybe an example being like, I always think of like, I don't know, Asics or whatever that like random running or New Balance, right? Like now they've had skate shoes for a few years, but almost nobody ever talks about New Balance skate shoes. Not saying that it would make any sense to talk about it on your guys' channels, but like, is there a way that you could see how Soul Retriever could either introduce people to new things or like be a part of setting those kind of trends that the industry kind of, ebbs and flows in and out of?
Yeah, like I think some of the stuff especially on Twitter, I'd say like our site is really really dedicated to like the top releases, and that's just like a function of like we got to have some sort of focus, but it's easier on
Yep.
social media to engage with that sort of stuff. So like we posted some stuff about like the Nocta release with Drake. Like we'll have anything that's like trending or anything that's interesting, like we'll put up. So like there's been some like cool work that I don't know, like you've seen like Bape come out with like some of those dad shoes, which are like kind of interesting. A lot of the Hoka One One shoes. So like they did some collabs with like opening ceremony, and that's been like pretty interesting. And like a lot of people are like not necessarily like that's not something people are going to pay resale for. That's not something you even necessarily need to pay retail for.
Yep.
But like those are kind of sneakers that are like on the fringe of that sort of stuff that you'll see in fashion magazines and won't necessarily see in like sneakerhead world. A lot of that stuff with like the Asics as well. Like you'll see You got like the Vivian Westwood collabs and like stuff like that, and like Asics, like the Kayanos that were kind of cool, and like the full cream, and like those are definitely more divisive than say like a Jordan 1 in like a classic, red and white, black and red colorway. Like those are your bread and butter shoes, but then you have kind of these more statement shoes from like fringe brands, especially when they're like not a traditional silhouette. So like maybe they're a running shoe, um, maybe they're a hiking shoe. So like I think you'll definitely see some more trends that direction. And I think we've already seen that with some of Kanye's releases, like on his Yeezy line, like with his stuff, not with Adidas, I'll say. So like he's got some like the boots and stuff like that, and I think like he's definitely drawing inspiration from a lot of other places.
I think on our
Yeah.
site we definitely covered most of like the bigger, I guess, like hype stuff that you need to enter raffles for, or that has raffles to enter. But on our Twitter, we're like super diverse with content we provide. So, like Cole does with Blazers, one of us will see something we're interested in and be like, hey, look at this new collab that we might not be might not be on the site with raffles for it, but like, cool shoe that we want to like get on people's radar. So I think, a second, way of getting the word out about other things is definitely through our social, because we're super engaged on there and, sharing different sorts of things on there.
All right, I was gonna say like probably like half our audience isn't like necessarily interested in like the knit sambas from Wales Bonner, but I was like, wow, I really want to buy these, but I'm not paying £40 sterling shipping from the UK to get these.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I will admire these. Maybe our UK audience will like them, but I'm not going to get them. Like that's the sort of stuff where like I want to still be able to share that, and like I know our audience will be like, oh, I haven't seen that before, but like that's cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a really interesting kind of challenge, right? Because you guys seem to have an advantage in a sense that you're. I mean, obviously, like with sneakers, we all have to talk about certain things in order to. It's almost like you're staying relevant, right? Like you've got to talk about Jordan 11s, for instance. Like not saying that this is a shoe that people wouldn't talk about anyway, but like at some point, with a lot of platforms, a lot of social accounts, there's some monetary exchange behind a lot of those posts, and that's why Instagram always, like, if you go to Instagram, it's like, cool, another hyped up Jordan 1 photo. Like, don't get me wrong, I think it looks dope, but that's what we all have to do on Instagram in order for people to see our shit. So what, like, how do we do that outside? And Twitter has been great for people kind of diversifying the way they think about stuff, but it is really cool to see and to hear you guys talk about that, because I think it's like those kind of things where you're just genuinely interested in a product, and maybe somebody doesn't know who either that collaborator is, or even the brand, or the silhouette or whatever, and next thing you know, 2-3 years from now, you're literally like, Raffles for the same types of stuff, right? Or that artist or collaborator. And it's kind of an interesting kind of, the way it all moves forward. But, you mentioned Danny, and like, kind of just throwing it out there, like do a project with him in the future. Like, what would be kind of your dream case scenario of like working with an artist or an athlete or a brand? And what would that look like for you guys? Didn't really put this on the pre-approved list, so I know I'm putting you on the spot, but it'll make you think a little bit.
Oh no, that's cool. I mean, I think yeah, like I would love to work with someone like Donnie, like work with someone like Shoe Surgeon, or like any sort of like sneaker artists that are out there, because like I think that would be cool, especially like if they're more of like up and coming. Like Donnie has like a pretty big audience, but like it's not super wide, and like it would probably be more beneficial for us, honestly. But I would like love to work with someone like that who's just like really passionate about like making these shoes, and like they're not super hype, but like they are one of a kind, um, in like the same way that a lot of these like hype shoes are. So like I'd love to work with someone like that, and then I think the other dream would be like working with a I'm going to use quotes here, like brand, like a real brand. Um,
Yeah.
if we were like, if we ever worked with like Warren Lotus, like I would never turn that down. I know we were like, I know you were kind of like scamming on him earlier when we were like, yeah, like his whole thing with Nike, but like whatever, good for him. Like he's making cool shoes. So
Yeah. It's one of those things that's really tough, right? Like we did an episode on the podcast a few weeks back about this, because obviously it's a hot topic, and it's it's just the nature of the changing of things in sneakers. I think there's so much access. Me at, I'm just going to like continue to make myself feel old in this, but like me 20 years ago could not find a way to make my own shoes without knowing somebody that worked for Nike or having friends or family in China, right? Like it just was not a possibility when I was a teenager, because all that, this whole world has kind of blown up and become all new. But like that specifically is probably the most challenging thing I could think of. Like, yeah, I could have figured out how to tear apart a shoe and put it back together, but to actually start the process of making, the quantities that he's making is a really interesting thing. And I think that I love that people push the envelope like that, right? Like I don't necessarily resonate with the shoes that he was doing. Like, I don't think it's one way or the other. I'm kind of just like, whatever, everybody does this kind of thing, right? And if you like the hockey mask, if you like the guns, like we've, flowers, like we've seen that same formula in a lot of different ways. And to me, it doesn't really matter. It's just everybody's doing something that they think is cool. And I think that in itself is cool.
Totally.
But like, it was really interesting this year to see, Jeff Staple kind of co-signing what he was doing. I kind of wonder like how that even came about, because on one hand, if Jeff's co-signing it, Nike's going to say, you can't do this. Right. So it's like, was that intentional, or was that just like, let's not go into that? But you know what I mean? Like, I think that's one of those things where too, like the one thing that I appreciate about what you just said about that, we all kind of have, these, whether they're opinions or, preferences or whatever. Right. But like just being open to working with people, in my opinion, is just super, sign of future success. Right. I can't tell you how many times myself personally have like, you don't know somebody until you actually sit down and talk with them. You don't know somebody until you spend an hour of your time doing whatever it is you do. And like a lot of times I think some of the coolest shit comes from when people are just like, hey, this is what I do. This is what you do. We're just going to go grab a beer or pizza. And like, next thing you know, like, so-and-so's got a like exclusive collection with Nike. And you're like, how the hell did that happen? Well, that person probably just went and hung out with somebody that they didn't know for a while until they figured out, oh, this is the shit we should be doing together. So
it's the secret combo, beer and pizza.
Yeah, something like that. Right. But I guess, so, I'm going to toss that same question to you, Harry. Is there like a particular person, brand, project that you would want to work on that would just be like, this is the 2021 goal?
Oh man,
or 2022 if it's a bigger, I don't want to put restrictions on it.
I think it'd be super cool if we could get an artist that does a collab and have it like exclusively released via like, let's say like the Nike platform, and then all like sneakers, and then also like just via us. I think that'd be super cool. If we could actually serve as like the as the other place actually distributing the shoe and people having to enter through us. So like, the whole idea of like working with brands in that extent is definitely something we're looking toward. Right now, to be totally honest, the past like, a few months and then the next few months is like all like dead focused on our mobile app that's being developed. But definitely like, as far as working with brands, working with creators, continuing that like, community aspect and really like, bringing people together through creators in the industry, we're all about that. And we're going to continue to further that. So definitely.
What would be like your like kind of advice to yourself at 15 years old, like, or the 15-year-old kid that's looking at you guys like, damn, how do I get to do that? Because like I get that, like, you got to have the jobs and all these things, but like doing what you do to the 15-year-old kid who just like sees sneakers as an impossible thing to purchase on sneakers is pretty cool, right? So what's like the piece of advice you give to that kid?
Like, I think the first thing, whether it's like sneaker related or just like, a passion you have, is like just to take that, like the leap of, a lot of people can come up with great ideas, but a great idea that's not executed on is nothing more than a dream or just, like a fiction. So I think taking that step to actually like taking the initiative to do something, that's the hardest part. And then once you do that, then, everything else after that is just, that's the easy part. That's the fun part. But taking that step and actually like pursuing what you're interested in and what you're passionate about and what you want to start, and not like doubting yourself and just doing it, as Nike would say, I think that's something big to be said about that.
As far as like advice to my earlier self, like I think I did a pretty good job of this when I was younger, but I've definitely done a better job of now as I learned that it was successful. Is like take as many swings as you can. I think in my career, I'm a software designer. Like in my career earlier, like some of my critiques was like from coworkers and just like other people who were like, you're always doing like so many things. And like, yes, that is tough, and like it makes it harder to focus on any one thing. But when you have a lot of things moving, it does make it easier to see which things are moving faster, and you can make a decision a lot sooner. Um, and if you don't take those opportunities, you won't like get to the point where it's moving quickly. And it's like Soul Retriever for me was like something I picked up and I was like, oh yeah, this is interesting. Like I'll spend a little bit of time on it, and like it really took off. And like now this is like my main side project. Like this is my main side hustle now. And like that wasn't the case like a couple of years ago. And if I hadn't just said yes, like when I saw this opportunity come up, I wouldn't be here. So I think like seeing those opportunities come, saying yes, and like investing a little bit in it, and seeing where that goes. Like not necessarily turning too many things down. I think that's an important thing to do when you're younger, because by the time you're older, by the time you have like more responsibilities and stuff like that, it does make it harder. Like you can't take those risks, and you can't buy into those things as often. Mm-hmm. Like you have too many responsibilities. And that's not a bad thing. That's because you said yes to things earlier. So I think just like taking those opportunities when they come, and trying to take advantage of them.
Shout out to Yes Theory. If anyone knows about that. YouTube guys, just all about saying yes. So to Cole's point, say yes.
And like now I'm like big on no theory, because like I have no time. So I got to say no to things, even though I want to help people and like want to work on other projects. Once you find something that does work, like stick with it for a little bit. And if you don't have anything that isn't like, if you don't have anything working, that's like fine. And like, that's your opportunity for yes. Like when you have nothing working, take on more yeses, like do more things, and like see which sticks. Cause like I was an art history major before this. I was a runner before this. I thought I was going to play hockey. I'm wearing my old hockey hat right now. I was 5'4", 110 pounds. I was never going to play hockey. It's like I was ping ponging between a bunch of different hobbies and stuff like that, and like kind of stumbled my way into all this. And like, that like I as often as you hear that from other people, and as hard as it is to execute on it, I think it's very much true. Like you will find something that works for you if you try a lot of things.
Definitely.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's really solid advice. So you guys said, you mentioned the app is in the works. Is there anything specifically that you're excited about it? Other than all of it. Yeah.
I'm glad you asked. Yeah, we are in, we're full force right now on mobile app development. Should be launching if anyone listening to this is getting it somewhat of an exclusive, but early 2021, mid, spring, hopefully around there. But yeah, we have a wait list on the app right now. So anyway, as far as like, what we're going to be providing, anything and everything that you see now on Soul Retriever, just better, faster, easier, plus just like personalized notifications, just a whole bunch of stuff. And we don't want to say too much, but if you're interested, you could join the waitlist on our site. And once we roll out the app, we'll be launching it in tiers to people on the waitlist, off the waitlist. But yeah, we're super, super excited about that. And it's going to be a one of a kind experience. Definitely not only in the, like sneaker community, but just overall the app is going to be like it's going to be the real deal. So.
Awesome. All right. Well, you guys want to share social, how can people follow? Just obviously Soul Retriever, but I guess plug where you got to plug.
Call you go.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to plug Soul Retriever. My personal Twitter is literal trash. So, you can, you'll find me in the replies on Soul Retriever, sharing my raffle wins when I occasionally win something. More often than not, I'm seeing other people's success, which does still bring me happiness. Absolutely. I don't like seeing other people lose. I love when we get replies on Soul Retriever saying you won a raffle and you entered off our thing. I get the biggest shot of endorphins. Nothing gets me more fired up than seeing someone that replied, be like, yo, I just got a PS5 because of your link, or like, yo, I just won this raffle. Because that gives us all like it as many raffles that I entered, it still gives me hope when I see other people win.
Exactly.
Yep.
Twitter,
Right on.
Twitter Soul Retriever, just one word Soul Retriever. Instagram is that Soul Retriever. Working on getting the Soul Retriever one. It's currently inactive, so we're working on getting that. But everything, pretty much for them, like all daily up to the minute content is all Twitter. So just at Soul Retriever, and then soulretriever.com.
Okay, cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks for spending, roughly an hour of your time with me and chopping it up. And I mean, I'm looking forward to the app. I'm looking forward to seeing what else you guys are going to do. And hopefully at some point we'll get back on and have this conversation again and be leveled up for the next one.
Totally. Thanks for having me.
Nick, thank you so much for having us. Appreciate your time, man.
Awesome.
Of course. All right.
Later.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of the Outside the Box podcast. If you enjoyed the show, consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or even subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you're looking for even more thought-provoking sneaker content, hit the link in the description to subscribe to our newsletter. Until next time, I'm Nick Engvall. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.